accept all of them and say, I'd have to talk to the procurement officer and see if we have to change.
Adding a lot of, you guys have just additional cost to validate it.
I know, like,
That does add some
what's that look? I'm like,
paperwork and logistical headaches. And there's a
I mean, logistical maybe, but paperwork's I don't know how different it would be. Because they're really getting paid by the applicant through us, so it's really just the accounts and keeping all
I just think in terms
organized.
of like for us, we do vendors and,
Yeah.
you know, and to some degree, the only downfall of it is that sometimes you better pricing with a single source. You know, you go 5 and all of a sudden, is that what
She's a good man.
treated me super duper.
Because to some degree, you may end up getting a higher quality of service.
It's just a fix on chiefly and
Like Beta brings such great resources in part because they're a part of everything.
Right.
So there's a trade-off.
Right, and I mean,
Like I know
There's-
for me at work, if I'm looking at additional vendors for things, I always look like pilot or something. It's so hard to evaluate.
right. I mean, so there's give and take because if you have somebody like me who's done all the work, and then you can also bring in somebody like Weston Sampson who's done all the work for DVW, so they're just as familiar. But then if you start giving work that Beta would have gotten on their own to other firms, they might pull away.
Can you grab mine?
And then you're basically giving them less work, which is always a concern. But it's definitely something to think about. We may, if we wanted.
Sure. Whenever you're ready. All right, good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, November 13th, 7:30 p.m., and I will call to order our planning board meeting for this evening. Our chair is just finishing up some paperwork, but we can probably get going. The first agenda item is discussion about planning board meeting, which is currently scheduled for December 9th. And of course, there is now a special town meeting on December 9th. John, I believe we already have a hearing scheduled for December 9th.
We do.
So can you just walk us through from a process perspective how we address that?
So there's really two options that I see in this. So we could ask, so it's Maspinock Woods is what's on the hearing, or on the agenda. So we could ask Maspinock Woods to request a continuation, and then it can be continued at, we hold the planning board meeting at the town meeting. We have a quorum, the board just votes to open, continue it, and then close, and that's it. The other option is we advertise the planning board meeting for town hall. Happens that no planning board members show up and there's not a quorum and everything gets continued anyway.
So you said in your memo to November 25th, that would be wrong, right? From December 9th?
Oh, yes, you are right. Yes, you're right.
Okay.
It would be December 23rd.
Do you have a recommendation of which of those?
I think it's cleaner to continue it,
Yeah,
I would,
hold a meeting at town meeting and just
Okay.
continue it.
we've done that before, right? We just went to one of the schoolrooms before we've had a quick meeting.
we typically
But is the
schedule a-
location already posted, or is, when we posted it would be here, or we didn't?
We haven't posted the agenda yet,
Oh, okay.
Okay.
so,
And the reason we can't continue it now is because we haven't posted the agenda yet, and they're not here.
so we haven't posted the agenda, and at the last meeting that it was on the agenda, we continued it to December 9th. So anyone who's reading the minutes or was at that meeting and didn't necessarily look at the agenda for this meeting or for the next meeting, they would still think it's on December 9th.
And there's no additional
thank you.
communication to them that would indicate a change. Okay.
Yeah,
But we can't do that now.
right.
Procedurally, at special town meeting, at 7:30, because that's when it's posted, we have to take this vote.
No,
No.
you could hold it. We haven't set the agenda for the 9th, so we could start at 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and just.
We
like
didn't set
did-
the time.
We
Okay.
didn't set the
All
time,
right.
we didn't set
Perfect.
the agenda, nothing.
So
Okay.
no
We're kind of
location, no
open to what
time.
we can do.
Yeah, through the chair.
Yeah.
Do we know actually the location and the time for the special town meeting?
Is the special town meeting at the middle school?
It is, they had
And
to
it's at
change,
se-
Did they decide that definitely? Because there was
Yes.
some conversation going around.
there was a
that
concert
going
that
to be
night.
at the athletic.
Okay.
Oh, well,
Do
that's,
you know, John?
I don't. I heard they may look at the high school, but I haven't heard anything else.
no, the,
Yeah,
well,
there
the,
was a lot of conversation.
Okay, actually, hold on. I'm hearing from four people. The concert was moved, Michael?
We got confirmation from the department head that the concert got moved
yes,
To where?
to a different
to a different
To a
day.
different night. So you know, this is our HCAM person, that special town meeting is at the middle school
middle school.
at 7 o'clock
7 p.m.
on December 9th. Okay, thank you, everybody. I didn't know about the conflict. Okay,
So should I make a motion to move our meeting to 6:30?
so you would just post it for like 6:40,
I don't think there's a
6:45?
vote
6:45.
needed. It could just be when
And
they
we,
want
and
to
we
start.
just need to, you just send a reminder to us to arrive by 6:45, have a meeting room for us. You'll post that in the posting, and we'll meet, and we'll make the vote. And I presume, obviously, that you will contact the applicant, let them know.
I will ask him if he plans on continuing and give him background as to what's going on.
Okay,
Assume he would.
okay.
Should we do that at the end of the meeting when we just, or doesn't matter when we do it?
Do what?
Today?
So do you want to make that movement?
No,
Is the timing right? Because don't we normally, oh, it doesn't matter.
we don't, the meeting has not placed, and
Okay.
time has not been set, so
No,
that's
but when
going
in
to be
this meeting do we
posted.
do it? We can do it right now in this meeting? The
John
motion?
just does it,
Okay. You don't need
Couple of
anything from
days
us?
before the-
You don't need anything from us?
right,
Okay.
yes.
We've got to make sure, check and see how the continuation was worded for Maspinock Woods. as far as the time is concerned. Because meetings, typically start at 7:30.
Right.
So I guess
You're going to be, have to double check.
if it was said, we can check the minutes, if it was said
Yeah.
that to the meeting on December 9th at 7:30.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, because I think
Right,
we've gone
our new
away from
style.
that.
Well, we can check the
But we can
minutes.
check.
And then if that's the case, we have to take we should sit together at town meeting. We have to take a few minutes at town meeting and have a little powwow.
Question, Maspinock would they have to be able to be in attendance? Because if they don't live in Hopkinton, it's not Mr. Perkins, is it?
I don't think they'd have to be in
No,
attendance.
they're going to know we don't have the availability to discuss it that night. We're going to have to work it out.
And secondly, for clarification, if some of us are stuck in traffic and aren't there, and there's no quorum, it's the same thing as if we're there and there's no
How about this,
difference?
we all plan ahead and do our level best to get to town meeting at 6:45, no later. That would
I
be
mean,
great.
yeah, it would be if no one could be there and there's no quorum, then there's no
Yeah.
quorum and everything gets continued anyway, but.
Yeah, let's hope
It's
that
just-
doesn't happen, but yeah.
But the same result either way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, like most posted meetings before town meetings, they are not televised, they just been in a classroom or.
Right, that's correct.
Right.
That meeting would not be televised at special town meeting. I appreciate that, Mike. But there would be minutes to document the action taken.
Yep. And then while we're on the topic,
Yes.
just to put some thought in everybody's brain, then the meeting after that is December 23rd.
Nice.
So if there's any
Last minute shopping.
thoughts to change it to earlier,
So-
we can do that at the November 25th meeting.
I think I emailed John and Muriel, but I cannot make the 23rd, but we're going to go out of town, we'll be leaving Sunday, so.
Maybe everybody could check their calendar. We don't have anything posted for the 23rd
We don't,
yet.
no.
All right.
And I don't think there's any
everybody take
hearings
the
on that,
action to
yeah.
check their calendar and let John know what their availability is on the 16th. Does that make sense?
There's no Zach meeting, I
Yep.
can tell you.
The only-
There is a growth meeting, but we could probably reschedule that.
So would we have one on the 9th and the 16th? Or-
The 9th is special town meeting.
Oh, right,
And then
never
we
mind.
would
Yeah,
have the
okay,
one on.
yeah, I'm just, great, thanks.
No, it's a little,
Special town meeting, then our
is it
meeting.
possible that we can make
then
that
Christmas.
decision tonight? Is everybody,
23rd,
I'm-
just do the 16th.
I'm fine with doing the 16th, yeah.
I'm fine
And
with doing the
Christmas, yeah.
16th. Frank, are you able to check your schedule?
I'm checking. Have it. Should be fine.
Okay. So we should have a quorum no matter what on the 16th, so that's helpful.
I
So,
just moved it.
okay,
So we're good.
perfect. Okay. All right, so the next order of business is
23rd,
the
no.
request of the Growth Study Committee for some nominal funding for data work that the school was doing. Some of the data that we were hoping, the Growth Study Committee was hoping could be done matches resales of homes with actual students, and that's not publicly available information. So the school was handling that work, and they are doing it for 2016, 17, and 18. I spoke to the town manager and the assistant town manager yesterday evening. That funding has been accommodated, so we appreciate that, and we have an understanding of a process going forward should we need nominal funding between now and town meeting, so that works.
So, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I know we have an agenda. I want to quickly mention, though, two things today that are important to our town. One is the passing of Kathy McLeod, our former school superintendent. It's in Hop News and HCAM, and she did a lot of good for our town. I just want to maybe take a moment of silence, if that's...
I'm entirely in favor of that. I will tell you that I met Dr. McLeod when she was interviewing for the position for superintendent. She was impressive then, and she took over at a very difficult, tumultuous time. And she did an impeccable job and was amazingly professional and brought the school district forward in her short time with us. So
Well
I
said.
support that. So take a minute. Okay, thanks. And
Thank
what
you.
else? Did you have something else?
The other thing was, the city of Worcester lost a firefighter this morning, and I just wanted to mention that we're all volunteers, but our professionals do a lot for us. And I see our Chief Slayman here tonight. He's here all our meetings and does so much for our town. I just want to thank him for doing the good work that he does and express my condolences for the loss of your firefighting brother.
Indeed. I think I mentioned on my way in that he got extra points, but then I see a lot of people came, but you get extra points for being here tonight, and we certainly do extend our condolences to all firefighters. Thanks, Frank. That was amazingly wonderful for you to bring up.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. If it's okay, I'm going to go out of order because I think that 4 and 5 will be quick, and then we can have our conversation about agenda number 3. So number 4 is the discussion of the Main Street Corridor Special Town Meeting article. If I'm correct, John, we don't really have, I put it on the agenda when I called the meeting quickly when the special town meeting was announced, in case we needed to take any action, but I don't think we do.
Nope, no action taken.
Or needed. So the planning board doesn't have any particular action in this. Did anybody come tonight to speak to the Main Street Corridor Special Town Meeting article to provide input on that? Okay, hold on one second. I'll go with Frank, but then come on forward, Brian. Yeah, go ahead, Frank. Yeah, absolutely. Hold on one second, Brian, okay? Huh? Standing mic for the guests? Okay. I didn't know the protocol. Sorry about that. Just don't start singing.
Oh, guys, listen to my voice. You don't want that. So my reason for coming tonight is I have a quick question.
I'm sorry, just protocol.
Yeah, Brian Herr, Hayden Row Street. The planning board in the past, I believe, has endorsed the project before various town meeting votes prior, right? I think.
I don't know.
That's my question. So if we
Yeah.
have endorsed, if the planning board has endorsed, has not endorsed, whatever, I'd be interested in understanding what those votes were from
So
years past.
people-
We've had 4 or 5 articles over the 10 years or so we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering where the planning board was on those. I know that the planning board has sent representatives to Boston with the town manager's office to meet with DOT and speak in support of the project while in Boston, but I don't know what the official votes were here, if any.
So, do you know if we've ever taken any official votes on this? In my tenure, I can tell you, we have heard about the project. We asked some questions, but there was no action or vote that we took. But I don't know about previous.
I haven't been here for any town meeting votes, so I don't remember.
Planning board votes.
Prior
But you
prior
wouldn't have
votes
been
to
here
town
because you
meeting.
would
Right.
come after me.
It certainly was discussed.
It was discussed.
So through the chair,
Yeah.
would it be appropriate if I make a motion to take a vote and send a letter to the select board
Well-
stating our opinion?
Possibly, right? Possibly, but to answer your question, I don't think we've taken any
Okay.
official votes, but I don't know. 100%.
I'm trying to remember myself, and I don't know, that's fine. Yeah.
Do you know, Frank?
From what I remember, we have voted for articles to support or not support, so that's a very good question, Brian, but right now, it's a different question in front of us for the special town meeting is, this board hasn't had an update on the current status of the project. I'm glad to see the police and fire and town manager and many members of the board of selectmen here, but we're looking forward to, at some point, having the town engineer give us an overview of where things are at, because the last time we spoke about it, I wasn't aware of some changes, and it would be nice to have it all wrapped up in front of us so we can understand it fully. So we were expecting more information, so this board, as it's currently constituted, would be able to make a more formal
So-
agreement, which we don't have the information for yet.
I'm
The
just gonna
time is
jump-
ticking here, so.
I'm just going to jump in. I don't, so from a process perspective, I don't think we have a formal vote. We could potentially vote to make a recommendation or something to town meeting, to special town meeting. Yeah, but I don't think we have a formal
Okay.
town vote. Do you have a request for us or a?
So the request would be, if the board is inclined, to look at whether or not they endorse the special town meeting process or the article that's maybe being proposed before a special town meeting. That's, I'm not exactly sure what's going to come before us yet at special town meeting, frankly, so just some dialogue and perhaps some input to the community about what we've done in the past over literally the last 20 years. And if there had been votes prior, I guess I'm just a little surprised that there wouldn't have been any planning board input in the past, but maybe there wasn't.
We were actually
Was there?
talking about that, I think.
Mr. Kamal is nodding his head yes to what? That I'm surprised, or that there was planning board input?
Please feel free to come forward.
What?
I have something to add when there's a time, yeah, but.
I'm sorry, no one
So
involved.
there, yeah, Mr. Kamal, I'll interpret here. Mr. Kamal has said that in past years there has been input from the planning board, a formal input from the planning board. Here we go. There we go.
Good evening, through the chair. I believe at different stages when we were submitting applications for the TIP grant, there was formal support from the planning board.
A formal votes of support, or a member of the board went with you?
I believe there were official letters that came from the planning board.
Okay, we will research that and make sure.
Everything else that goes beyond an article, there's emotions and there's all kinds of other things that take place at town meetings. So there's a lot of unknowns. What I do know, as fact, is all that we've done to get here with this project, including spending a lot of our money, and including spending a lot of the state's money, and include lining up all kinds of funding for this, including using monies from host community agreements that the planning board and everybody who's involved in with Legacy Farms and the Muse. I mean, you can look across town government and you can see connections to supporting and moving a project forward for a decade that now is at risk because certain folks are frustrated that they didn't get what they wanted at the meeting. I think it just opens up a huge can of worms for how we govern on all kinds of issues.
Yeah, so you didn't ask, this is a piece of unsolicited thought, not really advice. But I think that there are two issues. One is the project, and somebody dispassionately, thoughtfully outlining what has happened, what the vision is, what has been spent, what will be spent, what will be accomplished, and the why will be very helpful. Somebody else explaining, and you have a bit of an expert on your board, somebody else explaining the easement process, issue, and concern. And then I think for me, as a voter and a participant, the third issue is the how we govern, and that's really important to me as well. I respond to that a lot. So I think that separating those out is helpful in the moment at special town meeting.
Yeah, I think that all of that has been done at prior town meetings. Right. We have discussed easements, we have discussed the how, the why, we've discussed the money, we've discussed the funding. We've done all that, to your point. I agree, we're going to have to do it again.
Yeah.
But it's this whole notion of do it again that really was what rubs me the wrong way as a 20-year veteran of volunteering in this town.
Yes, I just would.
But we got to do it again. I hear you.
I would not tap into my frustration until after special town meeting.
I think frustration drives a lot of passion, which I think is good.
Yes.
Through the chair, if I could ask Selectman Brian Herr a question. If this article to defeat, I think it's Article 27?
47.
47, were to occur, is there any opportunity for the town to recoup its anything? Or are we dead in the water?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that question, probably.
Because the easement question is dependent upon Mass DOT and their standards for widening.
It's required by state law to have the easements.
Required to have state easements. So if we suddenly are without those easements, say by CVS or some of the other special areas in the downtown area, is there any chance that Mass DOT would approve a state highway or for improvements through through Hopkinton?
No, so as I understand it, the state funding, the 8 million of the 15 million or so that's coming as part of this project, the overall cost, that is tied specifically to the work that's been designed by the Mass DOT and the federal government, including the bike lanes and the requirements for that now per state and federal code. So all that's kind of in the mix, and to change any of that would end the whole process. It's going to be very difficult to recoup from this Another option, here we go, folks, this is the problem, we'll call another special town meeting. We'll go get 200 signatures, I'll go get 200 signatures, we'll call another special town meeting. And maybe someone will call another special town meeting after that, and another one after that. That's the problem. But I wouldn't think twice about calling a special town meeting if we can't get people to show up because they're all busy doing their holiday activities.
Follow-up question?
I think that, hold on one second. I think that you make a point that it is incumbent upon everybody to encourage attendance at this special town meeting, despite the
Dragging on
difficult
forever.
timing. Right. Yeah, Jane.
So my follow-up question is that if the DOT does not approve a new corridor, if we can't get the easements, does that mean that the town now has to acquire all of our costs for a new downtown?
There's a lot of that question as well, Jane. You should be a reporter because you're digging pretty deep into some stuff. I can tell you this, that the community, the Department of Public Works, the public safety officials, all of us, the boards of select board members over the years, we've all deferred to a lot of stuff that needed to happen in this corridor because this project was on a path that was moving forward in a positive direction with positive outcomes at town meeting votes,
Jane.
not just in 2018.
Hey, Jane, I'm going to remind you through me. Go
But
ahead.
in prior years, that has been, a lot of work has been sort of put off because of this. So yes, if this does not play out well for the community and we stall, our funding goes away. As a result of that, a lot of the work that we could have gotten done will not get done, but we're still going to have to clean up Main Street. And when we clean up Main Street, I've asked the engineers to get me hard numbers on what it'll cost to do just that basic work. I suspect it's going to be more than the $3 million that we're on the hook for right now to get a whole new corridor, including getting an intersection straightened. If we don't do the state plan and we don't get that state money, the intersection will remain the nightmare that it is today.
Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course.
Through the chair, I would like to make that motion, but should we do it now or should we wait till it comes up as number 4?
I'm sorry, until what?
Number 4, Main Street corridor.
That's what we're talking about.
We are talking about number
Oh,
4.
okay.
I moved ahead in the
Oh,
agenda.
okay,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
okay.
To be fair, I did come here to say something about this project.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Projects like this can be frustrating. They take years. It takes a lot of time, the professionals and the volunteers. As a member of this board for most of all the length of this project, I have questions I haven't had answered. And I don't think I'm going to get answers tonight, but I would like to air these questions again in front of some of the people who can maybe do something about it. I understand that the Respite Center crosswalk is staying. I'm not sure about that. I know that there are parking spaces in front of businesses that are being taken away because of the bike lane design. I want to talk about that for a second. I've spoken to some of the businesses there. I do business with some of the businesses on Main Street. And when I spoke to them about this, they said, well, you can't fight town hall. They were really frustrated. And I felt bad for them. And then, since then, we've done additional parking spaces in front of the police station, which is, I believe 6 or 7 or 8, which helps. But the businesses that thrive on parking, the barber shop, insurance company, they would be hindered without the parking spaces because of bike lanes that I don't think are needed the way they're designed. I think a lot of the feedback that we're getting from the abutters and people in town that ride bikes is that dual bike lanes in that format don't work. I've seen it in Cambridge. It's just, that makes things more of a mess. The state law is that every road in our state has a bike lane theoretically on each side of the street. If we did more to mark those bike lanes with signage and street markings, that would go a long way to help safety of people who do ride bikes in the street. And I'm just talking straight lines to make bike lanes as opposed to painted over lanes that are slippery for bike riders to ride on. And I don't think the painted over lanes have been removed. I think they're still painted over from what I saw of the latest design, but I may be incorrect. The sidewalk in front of the post office has not been addressed. The sidewalk in front of the post office on Cedar Street could be widened, because that's in the town's right of way, and it's not part of any plan that I've seen. And it's really frustrating because most of the traffic I see in town is on Cedar Street coming up the hill, and it backs up all the way to the bottom of the hill. If we could widen the top of Cedar Street, where there is town property that's covered over by an extra wide sidewalk, that would be great. And I have a couple questions about the difference between easements for construction, which is understandable. This construction, there's going to be need to lay down tools and move things around and implements of construction. And then there's the forever taking, where some people are losing their stone walls are being moved back, and they're losing portions of their front yards they'll never get back. And that's something that I don't think anyone's listening to. That every letter I read, every person I talk to has a concern that I don't think is being addressed. And sure, you can blame the letter that went out that, asking people to donate their property and all that was maybe scary for people and maybe work them up, but there are valid questions behind their concerns. And I would like to eventually get this information answered. I'm not expecting it right now, but if you have any answers right now, through the chair?
No. No, that's not what this is about. But other people, I think, raise their hands to speak. Come on forward. You can't be heard at home.
While he's coming
Sorry.
up, just a point on clarity on something Frank said.
You would like to make a point? Yes.
I believe that you said widening of the sidewalks. You mean narrowing of the sidewalks and widening of the road?
The sidewalk in front of the post office is extra wide, and partly it's in the town's right of way.
Yes.
And there's a newspaper article in Hot News about this that's pointed it out consistently
What's
over
that?
the years, that the sidewalk in front of the post office on Cedar Street
Yep.
contains space that we could use for roadway
So you
without.
want to
So
narrow the
you meant
sidewalk
narrowing the
and widen the
sidewalk
street.
and widen the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just to be
Sorry if I
clear.
Yeah,
wasn't clear.
I appreciate
Okay,
that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good question.
Yes, Mr.
John
Catino.
Catino, 1 David Joseph Road. I just called when people weren't sure whether or not the planning board in prior years has supported the project. I called the former vice chair, Fran DeYoung, and he said that the planning board had endorsed the downtown project in prior.
I don't
So
think we did formally.
we will find
But anyway, yeah, but he's
we'll
gonna call
find
back
the
in 20
agendas
he's
and the
gonna call back in
notes
20
and the
minutes and tell
votes.
us when
Okay.
it was.
Okay.
But to address that last comment by Frank, the end of Cedar Street is being widened, and there is going to be a turning lane there. And when we were talking about the parking spaces, I believe there are 108 parking spaces now, and at the end there's actually going to be 110. There actually are going to be even more parking spaces. And when it comes to the bike lanes, that's the new live, work, and play whole aspect of the state now, and they require, when we're talking about green, they require bike lanes. And
don't
if we
require
wanted
them
to
like
split-
that.
if-
That's a
wait,
design
wait,
choice.
Frank, please. If we wanted to split the bike lanes and have one on either side, then we lose a
Through
lot
the
of
chair,
parking
John.
spaces.
Through the
Oh,
chair.
sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
That's
Then
all
we
right.
lose even more parking spaces. With the temporary easements, some of that is just so that if somebody had to stand or walk across somebody's lot line in order to put a sidewalk in or something, we have to have temporary easements. And as far as the permanent easements go, if a stone wall has to be moved, they will absolutely recreate that stone wall exactly the way it was. And then when people were talking about the term of the easements, the project is going to be two building seasons long. And when they were asking for 5 years, it's so that we have some guarantee. If we only did it for 2 seasons and then said just 2 years, and then somebody's stone wall falls down, we can't go back to the contractor. Or if their tree dies, we can't go back to the contractor. So that just gave us an extra 36 months to go back after people if something happens that we didn't like. So I remember you had a whole bunch of stuff, and I was just trying to hit some of them that I remember, but being in my 60s, I can't remember all of them.
You're doing all right, John.
I'll
You're doing all
review the
right.
tape and try and help.
Hold on. Amy, would you take a minute to talk about what you found in terms of towns working with businesses to mitigate we could potentially contemplate some work in that regard.
This came up at the study committee. I'm trying to think. So a lot of states and cities have a business survival guide during road construction, and they come up with a very comprehensive plan to help the businesses during construction. And I brought this to Zach. I don't know if they discussed it.
Yeah, a little bit.
That there might be some need to waive the, right now we don't allow temporary signs for more than 30 days, and we don't allow off-premises signs, but that during construction, businesses might really need to put a sign a few doors down saying how to get in, how to park. And that, so I hope the town is going to be doing that, but I haven't heard yet. I
I
hope
just thought
maybe
that
there'll be
was
some info at town meeting.
Yeah, it was a good idea to publicize. Yeah, please, and then we're going to have to wrap this one up, but
Irfan Nasrullah, 211 Winter Street.
good evening.
So I just wanted to comment on a couple things that I've heard. One is the issue of stone walls being moved. And while, from my understanding is while that there are walls being moved as under a permanent easement, property owners have actually agreed to that, and they've given their assent. They don't have an issue with it. It would be rebuilt. The other thing is we do have an issue, well, not an issue, but there are certain property owners where they have fences or property that's actually on the town right-of-way or on town property. And for the town to actually exercise their rights, yes, the wall gets moved or the fence gets moved, but it stays entirely on town property. This is just basically people who've been able to enjoy having property that's not being used and claim it as their own. So I think there's a lot of details out there, and I think that actually a comprehensive presentation is required.
I think it's going to be very
I
helpful.
think, yeah.
And a dispassionate answering of questions. I mean, it is frustrating. I've been in town government longer than Mr. Herr. That's a long time. And I tap into the frustration of, re-explaining and re-answering questions, but there is so much value in hearing people, even if you're frustrated by the questions, and then having people prepared to capably and confidently answer each and every one.
I agree. And also, I mean, I just want to throw it out there, now speaking as a business owner in the downtown area, it's going to be inconvenient. I think we all understand that, but having gone through renovations of my own, at my house, while it's going on, yes, it's difficult, but there's a crown jewel at the end. Hopkinton was just rated #1 community in Massachusetts to live in, and I think this is only going to bolster it.
Thank you. Yes, Jane.
Okay, I think I can shed some light on Frank's comments about the bike lanes. As chair of the Upper Charles Trail Committee.
Go through me, right?
Go through you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I can tell you that we came into this process late. The town has been negotiating and trying to solve this downtown problems probably since the 1950s. It was basically about 3 or 4 years ago that we met with the DOT and town officials and multiple other agencies because of our charge from the select board to include the center trail in the Upper Charles Trail going from Milford to Ashland. The only way to do that is to go east from the center trail. In order to do that, we met with the DOT, and they would not allow us to cross the road by Hopkinton Lumber because it is within so many feet of an existing traffic light. For our trail, we need to be able to accommodate flashing lights, just as they do with the Milford Trail, and they will not allow so many of these lights within so many feet. We could not do that. So we had to come up with an ulterior plan that was unique. And we did that. And we asked them, as long as you are trying to, the mandate is that you need a 5-foot bike lane on one side and a 5-foot bike lane on the other side. And we said, well, if you're not going to allow us to cross this road here to allow for a crosswalk, why can't we put both lanes, combine them? And they said, well, we've never done that before. And I said, that's not good enough. Let's come up with a different plan. How can we make this work? And they did, and they came up with an elevated bike lane. So it is two-directional, but it is perfectly safe because it's elevated. It's not in the traffic lane. And it is separated from the pedestrian lane. And what we're trying to do here is accommodate safety for not only our school kids that get out of school, early release, but our mothers who are trying to push baby carriages and people who are trying to accommodate businesses, and two-lane directional bicyclists who can safely travel in a separated lane, separated from parking spaces and the travel lane. And the other comment was that, well, you're going to be crossing gas station and existing driveways. Well, look at the current situation. The cyclists are already crossing those existing driveways and existing gas stations. What we are trying to do is make it safer, and that is the ultimate motive, is to make it safe.
Okay, thank you.
End of story.
All right, so Dave, you wanted to suggest?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we send a letter to the selectmen with supporting this project. With no mention to the town meeting, that's just that how we stand on this project.
I second.
Is there discussion?
Of course there is.
I looked at November 27th, 2017 minutes. That was a presentation on this. There
That
was
was
no
us.
vote taken.
No vote, yeah.
That's not to say there wasn't a vote taken previously. That's just the one
Right.
that Amy pointed me to.
Yep, that's
So
the one I remember.
Yeah, that's kind of how we all remember, just a presentation and no vote. And I think it actually happened twice that Dave came in.
Discussion?
I just said discussion. So seriously, Frank, you've had a ton of time on this, and we do have to move on to a bunch of people so quickly.
Discussion about Dave's motion.
Yes, quickly.
I don't think we have enough information I don't have enough information to support or not support the project as it stands, because I don't think any of us have the full picture. And I don't think it doesn't sound like we will have that until special town meeting. So I would not feel comfortable supporting or denying this. But I will say, I don't think we're that far apart as a town. I just think we should listen to each other and what's being said by those that are in opposition and why, and make those adjustments, because if it sounds like it's all or nothing, that's not the best way to move forward.
Thank you. Yes.
If I may, and you know, my concern here is that we don't know what the article is going to be. We haven't had a formal presentation of some kind. So even if we're taking some sort of straw vote of how we feel about it, I don't really know what we're evaluating in that discussion. And personally, I'm a big advocate for this project. I'm a cyclist. To me, this is not about a bike lane. It's about a multi-use path and the extension of the center trail. But I just, as a board, I struggle a little bit with what exactly we're voting on and evaluating in order to carry forward in some way for town meeting. So I would actually, and I'd also say that I think that even taking a vote, the result is if not enough people vote in support of it, then that could be construed to mean something different than what I think might actually be intended. So I'd actually recommend not taking a vote on this and letting the details flush themselves out in town meeting, where we have a full picture of information, and if we want to speak as individuals at town meeting, then we can do so.
So just for process, we're going to take a vote on
We're
whether
going
we
to hear
should
from
vote?
the rest of the board first.
No, but I mean, what,
We're just going to hear on your motion.
okay, sure.
Okay.
I agree with Gary. That's it.
I agree with Gary. We're going to have a complete presentation at town meeting. The residents that wrote the petition can be heard, and then I don't feel comfortable voting on it tonight myself. I would abstain if we vote.
So I also agree with Gary, so that sort of calls it. But that is not to say that individually, we might not enthusiastically support the vote. I can say towards another point that Mr. Herr made really capably, I really struggle with the concept of overturning previous town meeting votes that have been so long-standing and have sort of footed the work that has gone on over years, whether I felt great about the individual votes or not. That happens all the time. So I'm conflicted and want to understand better what that means to overturn previous town meeting votes. And I will also say that when we had the presentation in 2017, it was the town engineer, it was the engineer in charge of the project. I asked some of the same questions I had asked at a public meeting of the engineers, and they did not have the requisite data to answer those questions, and I am not an engineer. So I really feel strongly that it was a poor showing, and we could have expected better. And I sure hope that at special town meeting on December 9th, people come prepared to answer every question, all the specifics, and make their case for why this project is necessary, important, and a go-forward position.
So the end result from what I'm hearing from people is I will withdraw my motion, but I would like to comment that I don't think we've done our job properly. We had Dave come before us, we all asked questions, we said, oh, it sounds good, no big deal, time went by.
We didn't say that. We didn't say that.
Well, we didn't say that, but there was no major.
We asked questions.
We
We
asked
asked them to bring the information back. We did.
In my opinion,
Yep.
I thought that we weren't proactive from that point.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, we weren't proactive from that point, and now we're kind of behaving exactly like the town as a whole and saying, oh, we don't have enough information, should we? But to Mr. Hurst's point, we should trust the process. We are part of that process. We've gone through this process. So this is just my opinion.
Yep,
but I
point
will
made,
withdraw
Dave.
the
I appreciate
motion.
that. Yep, I appreciate that. Okay, so I thought that would be quick, and I was very confused. So thank you all for commenting on that. I hope people do attend December 9th. I think it is real important on a number of levels that we come and we affirm the process as it is structured. I will entertain a motion on the minutes of September 23rd.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So now we're going to discuss agenda item 3. It's the special town meeting warrant article for the acceptance of Legacy Farms Road North in response to school bus pickup drop-off safety issues. So, Mr. Yelsich, take us away from the process perspective for the planning board.
So the planning board has gotten the petition from the select board. The hearing for the select board is on the 19th
Yep.
to vote on this petition, and the planning board can vote to recommend that the select board move it to a town meeting or approve the layout of the road is I think what it actually would be, or the board could vote not to do so.
Can you repeat the date? I'm sorry, the 19th of November.
Next Tuesday.
Correct, yeah.
That's a.
Is that right, next Tuesday?
That's, yeah, the select board hearing is the 19th of November.
7:30 PM is the public hearing.
The hearing is in the the hearing notice is in the administrative files.
So to be clear, the planning board does not have an article going forward on this, but we are responding to a citizen's petition article.
Correct.
Okay. So, yes, Frank?
Have they actually passed it in with the signatures?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It was received, the signatures were verified.
Nice.
A notice to the owner, which is Roy, was sent 7 days before the hearing, so that was taken care of. Now I believe the next hurdle is getting a plan. I think it's 7 days before the town meeting is when they need it by. Not necessarily 7 days before the hearing from the select board, but the actual town meeting.
Who owns that action item?
That, I believe, would be the petitioners and the owner. It would be the responsibility of the petitioners, but obviously the owner would also have a role.
And they know this?
I believe so. I believe it's been communicated to them, yeah.
Sometimes dealing with the town is new for people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody on the board have particular comments or questions before we open it up to the public?
Yes, do we have any other meetings between now and town meeting? Or
We have the 25th of November.
we do have the 25th of November, okay. So we could potentially wait to take any action on this until then?
Correct.
Okay.
However, what is our role at the select board's public hearing?
So I take that back. The recommendation would be to the select board. So they're meeting on the 19th. So if you vote on the 25th, obviously it would be too late. And the article is being signed on the 22nd. So it would either be a go or no go by that time. So
Okay.
So we would have to come up with a recommendation tonight if we were going to have, we would have to up or down, I suppose. Mary, do you have any thoughts or comments?
I fully support this petition to accept the Legacy Farms North Road. And I do think that we have the responsibility as planning board to ensure that the contingencies are appropriate or in place to make sure that once the construction is completed, that the developers, do the proper finishing touches that are done for a road. But I think that this is special. This is a special circumstance. Yeah.
I agree.
So when we last discussed this, our head of the DPW spoke against doing so. And I guess for me, to provide some clarity here, is I'd like to understand a little bit more about not so much what the resistance has been in the past, but what it would take from a DPW perspective and from a town perspective to do this and protect the interests of the town along the way. Because I don't know if we've actually had that conversation, and I don't have a good sense as to what it would take to protect the town's interests if this road is accepted.
So through the chair, just to answer a little bit of that, and I'm sure Mr. Westling could talk more to it, but Beta prepared a letter and a memo, which is in the administrative items folder, that outlined the work needed to be done. That was in 2016. We have not gotten an updated estimate as to what needs to be done, but there was a bond paid that I believe was $776,000 to complete the work.
Okay, but sorry, through the chair,
Yeah.
I believe that Mr. McDowell has also made some informal offers to provide the additional, any additional monies that might cover the anticipated costs if for some reason things didn't.
He may
fall
have.
through.
He may have.
And
I don't
he's
know.
not here either, so I want to make sure that our town interests are protected, but it feels to me like there has to be some way to move this forward.
Do you want to ask Mr. Westerling directly if there's a way?
Sure.
He's here.
He
Mr.
is.
Westerling, I hate to put you on the spot, but here I go and do it.
Well, he didn't actually wear clothes to blend in.
He's running away now.
He's working. He's on the job. So the question really is how do we move forward with this somewhat different, interesting, ticklish problem and protect the town's interests if there's a way?
So through the chair, I think that's the biggest challenge that we face. We're trying to balance the safety of the children in the neighborhood, which we all have as our utmost important factor, but we're trying to also protect the town and not having the town at risk. As Mr. Gelsich said, there's at least $775,000 worth of work to be done there. Who is going to complete that work?
Just for the record, he didn't say that there was that much work to be done. He said that's the amount of the bond.
Why?
If I may clarify, it's kind of one and the same. The Beta reviews the work that needs to be done.
In 2016.
In 2016, and then
Gotcha.
estimates how much that work would cost, and that's what the
I
bond is.
gotcha.
So that may now be at the prevailing wage. If the town, let's say for example, the town is tasked with completing this because it is the town asset, at prevailing wage, that could be well over $1 million. So who will pay for that? And it has to be an ironclad guarantee that that money will not come out of the taxpayers. The other question is, this winter, if we were to accept it in its current condition and we put town assets on that roadway, plows and sanders, I don't know, I haven't been out there to inspect the roadway to see if it's completely constructed to a level where it's safe to put town assets out there. So My recommendations in the past have been, is the road ready for acceptance? In other words, does it meet the planning board's rules and regulations? We have made negative recommendations based on cracks in sidewalks until they were repaired. So there's $1 million worth of work here. I don't know how that will get done. I don't know who's going to pay for it. I don't know who's going to do it. So that there's just too many questions here. And as the Director of Public Works, for me to be able to answer those questions, I'm not prepared to be able to answer
So
those.
here's a question. We had a huge road opening, and we have opened it and invited all through traffic to kindly utilize that road. How is it that we came to the determination that it was safe and possible to do that? That's 2.5 years ago. We had a big ribbon cutting with state and town officials all out there clipping the ribbon and inviting through traffic. So how do we know we're safe doing that?
I don't believe that I was part of that decision.
That's
I
fair.
think that may have been part of an agreement with the planning board, that when it got up to base course, that it would be open to the public to alleviate the traffic that was going downstairs, downtown.
So that is the central question for me, is that we have opened it up. We do invite through traffic. We are appreciating the benefit of that, and that through traffic is flying uninterrupted past school children as they load and offload, because there's no mechanism currently for stopping traffic while those buses are loading and offloading kids. But I appreciate your time.
So, through the chair, if I can follow up. Just a hypothetical situation here, I realize this is hard to answer, but if Beta goes out and does a new assessment and says that there is $1 million of remaining work to do to this road, and if the developer offers to put the additional sum into a bond to cover those expenses, then does that address your concerns of protecting the interests of the town?
I think that through the chair, I think that answers who will pay for it, but it doesn't answer who will actually conduct the construction, who will manage the construction. Will that become another town project that we have to manage, that we have to put out to bid? Similar to what we did when we received the MassWorks grant of $5 million to build the roadway up through base course. But that would add additional costs of a design engineer to design the final construction plans, an engineer to oversee the project, an engineer to manage the contract and the activities of the contractor that's out there. So that would be another $100,000, $200,000. And who would pay for that?
I'm coming around.
So I've met with some of the neighbors, and I promised I'd ask them this question to you, John, specifically, through the chair. The developer's not here, but in the past he's mentioned spending $50,000 a year for a shuttle bus. And if he's willing to do that for 5 years, that's $250,000. Would that be sufficient to reduce the risk on the town for accepting the road? And it sounds like you're saying it probably could be up to 12, 14 instead of 1.4 million as opposed to 750, whatever we have now in the bond. So is there a level? Is there an amount for the bond that you would feel most comfortable that would cover?
Can I just suggest that we are off-roading into the wild hypotheticals now? We don't have the information from the
With the
town
developer
engineer.
not being here, but
And two, can I just say too, that Mr. McDowell did call, say that unfortunately he did not know about the meeting tonight and is invested in helping solve this problem, but he couldn't be here tonight, so.
I don't see the neighbors here now. I see other neighbors, but I asked about the alternative ideas, and one of the alternatives was using the lot by the old Peach Street and maybe putting up a circus tent, maybe having the children wait there and have a parking lot there, but that's only 6 or 8 cars, and they'd be parking along the lower side of what used to be Franklin Road.
I never heard the circus tent idea. Where have I been?
And,
With music.
because it would be temporary. It would be a temporary measure, and that's a town-owned part of the road. The Hopkinton owns that part of the street. So it could be a bus stop, it could be a parking lot, temporary parking lot constructed. And developers mentioned being willing to do that. The neighbors have, some feedback I've gotten from the neighbors, as well as it's further for the high school kids to walk. While they're in high school, they can walk 800 feet more, whatever it is. But it's the younger kids. And one of the benefits of living in Hopkinton, I've heard, is that the sense of community that we have, that you have in that neighborhood, that we have in our town, is that we help each other, and that different parents shuttle the kids to the end of where they currently have the bus now. But that can be problematic if there's a problem, one kid's sick or another kid's sick, you don't know, and it takes longer. And another thing that we haven't really talked about yet is that as more units come online, there's going to be, right now it's 35 cars a day. There's going to be 50 cars a day or 60 cars a day pretty soon over the next year. So looking for ways to help our neighbors. If we could have maybe, we can't really decide anything here, it sounds like, other than what we can do to move forward, but I'm just looking for other ideas.
We are looking for problem-solving ideas. Yes, Dave?
If I could
Oh,
just
yes,
address that,
of
Madam
course.
Chair.
Yeah.
I also met with two of the residents that are here this evening, and we talked about some of the options that were mentioned before and evaluated, and they were dismissed for various reasons. And I think that the current one that the residents are looking at, the current option, is the acceptance by the town. And for me, I'm only standing here as the Director of Public Works looking at it from a construction perspective. All the other factors that have to be considered, those are other decisions that have to be made by other parties.
So we just need to determine really if the town can sustain buses and town vehicles, because certainly other traffic is being sustained really well. Dave?
So I think, Muriel, you made some good points about the length that the road has been open for 2.5 years, with traffic through there. So
And we welcome that. We want that to
And in
happen.
my opinion, let's just get the road accepted and do it the right
Do
way.
what we need to do.
To Frank's point, we were looking at possible alternative ideas, but that was when we didn't have an STM in front of us. That we
Right.
thought we were gonna have to wait
Right.
a long time. But now that we have an STM in front of us, let's do it right. And to Gary's hypothesis. Hypothetical, thank you. Gary's hypo. You had mentioned the developer covering the cost, and I think hypothetically we could get the developer to cover the cost of the project plus the additional administration fees. I mean, I think that would be a good
I think we need
solution.
to have an updated estimate for sure.
I think we
and
should,
that that's
in my final
possible.
summary, I think we should just find a way to do it, and let's stop talking about this.
And
I agree. I use that road 2 or 3 times a day. It does need some work. There's a drainage problem at the bottom, like down by the bridge, that needs to be addressed. And I don't see that, how we can't come to some sort of responsible acceptance of this road with a memorandum of understanding or some sort of legal language that says that the developer will carry these costs at the end of the day. And from everything I've heard from Roy, he's willing to do that. But, you know, if we can get both parties to sign some sort of legal language, I don't see why this can't happen.
Thank you. Okay. So, yes, indeed. Thanks, John. Mr. Kamalo, certainly. I see that you're wearing your jacket. Are we getting frozen out of here on purpose, or?
I'm looking for Dave. Again, through the chair. This is a very tough conversation. As John stated, everybody here is committed to protecting our children. And at the same time, I think you've asked the appropriate questions in terms of the risks that are posed to the town by accepting this roadway earlier than what our regulations provide for. And to that end, I have a question for the planning board. I have not asked staff this question, it's just come up now as we're discussing. Accepting this road at this point, would that require the planning board to waive any of your regulations?
So I believe you probably know the answer, but we're going to go ahead and ask town council the right way to do it, but don't disappear. So I happen to know that 2.5 years ago, you were at the road acceptance, and you invited all town dignitaries and state dignitaries to come down and clip the ribbon and invited the traffic through. Would you consider as an alternative option that we take that road out of service so that the kids are safer until you are comfortable formally accepting the road? Except to residents.
I think if we're looking for a solution to the issue before us, I don't think that's the solution.
So let's find the solution.
Exactly. And I should point out, in town, we have many private ways. This is not uncommon to have a private way in town.
We don't have private ways that serve as through traffic intentional ways. We don't have those.
It so happens that the town's planning process defined that road as a bypass.
It does. It did. So it's a unique situation. I think we
Correct.
agree on that.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that there are residents here who would like to speak on this, so I'm going to invite people to come forward one at a time. For those that are new to the process, please introduce yourself and your address, and then go ahead and ask your questions or make your comments to the chair.
Good evening, Ravi Gordy, 15 Spruce Street.
Good evening.
So I think a lot of you guys already touched upon a lot of points that we wanted to raise as a community. I don't think there's any disagreement about that there's a safety concern and we all want to solve it. There were some questions or some discussion about the possible alternatives, so moving the bus stop. And as you know, I think one of the documents that was shared for this discussion, for this meeting, was the survey responses. I think some people clicked on a different one, thinking it's the other one. So that's why it's 93, otherwise it would have been 100. But there's unanimous agreement from our everybody that responded that it doesn't make sense, because we feel like it doesn't address any of the safety concerns that we have. So it's because the students have to walk longer, especially in the winter and the icy sidewalks, with carrying their school bags, cross an intersection that is a very dangerous intersection, especially when it's moved closer to 135. It's right next to 135. There's not enough parking spots to accommodate 30 cars, like I think you mentioned before.
35?
35, yeah, and potentially going up in the future. So, I mean, we can come up with a few other reasons which actually doesn't make sense to move the bus stop. The other alternative, a private shuttle or a private bus. We've actually explored multiple options to actually do that, but unfortunately we've come short of finding any service that would actually be willing to do that for the $50,000 cost. So that was the challenge there. That would have totally helped solve the issue, at least on a short-term basis. So those are the alternatives that we pursued, and unfortunately kind of hit a dead end there. And I think, as you mentioned, we collected the signatures to at least have this discussion be discussed as a warrant article in the special town meeting. I just wanted to clarify from our standpoint, what we wanted is, we wanted to have just all the different parties aligned here, right? Mm-hmm. So if we cannot get the road accepted as a public road right now, as is, then we at least want to look at what's preventing, Mr. Westerling had some really valid concerns. So can we potentially explore something like maybe making an exception to the bylaws to have this accepted, and maybe identify the different contingencies upon which the road will be accepted, or potentially even changing the bylaws so that it would make it easier to have this accepted later on. So those were the alternatives that we wanted to propose. And if there's other potential solutions that the board can recommend, that we're definitely open to that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so I wrote down 3 things that I want to make sure that we ensure that we're looking at. To Mr. Westerling's point, an update, and Mr. Gelsler's point, an updated assessment from the town engineer, so we know exactly what work is in front of us.
Or beta, right?
Beta, right. Yeah, I'm sorry, Beta.
Not data.
Yeah, sorry. You're right. Our engineering consultant.
Chair, could that include the additional cost that Mr. Westerling was talking about?
I think it has to. I
Yes,
mean, I think
okay.
that's the point.
Sure.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, we
Yeah.
need to know what actually we're
The
asking.
entirety.
Yeah. And then it seems clear to me that we are, me personally, that we're dealing with sort of a hybrid situation. It's an unusual situation. And I would suggest that the planning board contemplate asking town council to advise us on how best to accomplish this, if it is possible to do. And then recognizing that it may not be possible at special town meeting, I think that this gentleman's point that we look at a bylaw change to accommodate this special circumstance, not to change the bylaw for every road, but to accommodate this special circumstance isn't a terrible idea. I don't know that it is the right idea, but it's not a problem. It makes sense to think about in terms of bylaws or what has to happen. If it can't happen now, what has to happen by annual town meeting to appropriately solve it. I think at least were the 3 things that float around in my head.
Just a point of clarity on that last point. Could it be a waiver instead of a bylaw change?
Yeah, whatever, I mean, if town council comes back and tells us that there is a clear process that people can understand and people can impact and people can participate in, and we can accomplish, that's great. If there is something that I anticipate that there could easily be something we need to do that is a little bit more,
Permanent?
Yeah, more intentional. There, some change has to happen in order to be able to accommodate. I don't know that our bylaws were written contemplating a through road. So I just want to make sure that we at least tee up those 3 moving pieces going forward. Does anybody have any other suggestions?
Just to echo that, it sounds like immediately we have 2 asks. One is for Beta to give us an updated cost to complete, and then the second, and this, I'm just going to echo what you said, but with town council, I'd like to hear from them not so much an assessment of whether or not this is a good idea, but what is it going to take to accept this road? And I know that's a subtle difference, but I just, it's easy to say we can't do it because X, Y, and Z, but what would it take to do it? And then the third one, to me, those are the immediate ones.
Yes, I agree.
The third one, I think, is longer term, and it depends on what comes back in terms of a cost estimate and what
Yeah.
town council comes back with in terms of what potential pathways there are here.
Yep.
If there are no pathways, then I think that's when we start to contemplate your third
Yes,
option.
no, of course. I just throw that out there for sort of the future. It's not clear to me that this is actionable at special town meeting. And it may be. I want to make sure we explore it fully, and I know that we're on sort of a hurry-up schedule. That's the problem with special town meetings, but I want to make sure we're as prepared as we can be. I think that I can safely go to the public hearing next week and assert that the planning board is in favor of finding a way to appropriately accept this road and protect the town's best interests. Also in that, when we're talking to town engineer, I think that it should be stated, we should be connecting with the developer and make sure he's working with the town engineer to understand what is potentially in front of us.
And, you know, there's a third immediate piece, and
Okay.
then based on what those estimated costs are, we've also got to go back to the developer and
Yes.
assess whether he's willing to put
Yes.
up additional bonds to cover
Yes.
those costs.
Right, right, right.
From my perspective, I think you guys covered my concerns. It's a risk management issue, it's a developer issue, but it's also a community issue, a hybrid.
Yeah, it is, and we're all benefiting from that bypass road. I have used it myself, and I live on the other side of town, but I can see that it is probably a huge benefit to folks who live on this end of town. So I don't think we have any votes to take or anything, just action items.
To recommend.
A vote to recommend?
It would be a vote to recommend, I'm trying to remember what it would actually be a vote to do. Vote to recommend the select board accept the layout of the road, I believe. Because that's what they would be voting on at the 19th,
In order to put it on
in order to put it on.
special town
It
meeting.
goes on special town meeting. This is a public hearing. It goes on the warrant with or without the select board's recommendation, which is a key point.
I almost look at this as the previous discussion we just had. If we don't have enough information, we shouldn't vote on it, right?
But-
There's too many moving parts.
There are a lot of moving parts. I don't disagree.
Sorry, through the chair. But to John's point, though, that wasn't necessarily us supporting this article. That was us recommending to accept the layout, which which I think is different than us voting on whether or not we support
Have we
this
ever,
article.
through the chair, sorry, have we ever been asked to do this before?
On roads?
Yes.
All the time.
For the select board to accept the layout?
Yeah. I think that's the process.
Didn't we
isn't it, for
do that
roads?
originally then? With
It's
this?
different for
How did-
special town meetings,
It's different for special.
just
how
in
is it
terms of
different?
timing and
Timing.
how the process is. Usually, I believe the article would come from either the subdivider, the applicant, and then go through the planning board. But I don't think it's significantly different than how it's usually done.
And even, this is through the chair, sorry, this is a citizen's petition. This isn't our article, right?
This is a citizen's petition.
I don't think
Yeah.
we have to act on it, in my opinion.
So we do have to vote to either recommend or not recommend the road layout, right, for the
I mean,
select board?
it's a recommendation, and I didn't get a clear indication from town council that it's required that the planning board recommend or not recommend.
So.
So
just-
however it's done in the
just-
past.
Just for fun, the road layout is certainly a technical term, and you being an engineer, can you just tell us what that means, the road layouts? I know what it means for me.
So the road layout is essentially the plan of the road, the technical engineered plan of the road. That's what the owner has to present 7 days before a town meeting. Whether it's going to be able to make it in time for the select board hearing is unknown. Whether it's going to be able to be completed by town meeting is unknown. But the layout itself is laying out of the road on the plan.
So, if I may, to Mr. Westerling, I'm curious if you see any risks associated with us accepting the road layout, or recommending to accept the road layout, not actually accepting the road itself. And I'm just relying on our professionals here. And I just
agree.
want to make sure there's no additional risk to the town. Maybe Mr. Kamala should come forward too. I
Yeah,
don't
do you have
know.
an opinion too, Mr. Kamala? Because we're happy, the town is happy to hear what you have to say as well.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to the town planner.
That's what just got whispered in your ear. I love it. Oh, no.
The question was, have we seen the layout for the road?
I have not, and that's one of the issues, is
Well,
that,
we have accepted it with a formal ribbon cutting, and people are whizzing down it, so I hope somebody has given some thought to the layout of that road.
And through the chair, if I may,
Yeah.
the risk of opening it up to through traffic, that risk went to the developer. So the developer is at risk if there's any problems with through traffic using that as a through street. What we're talking about now is a risk to the town. And
So-
if nothing else happens, I know that when Roy was with me before, or next to me before the planning board in August, he offered to complete the road.
Yeah,
And it's unfortunate that we didn't take him up on that offer, because all of this discussion will be a moot point now. So I think it's incumbent on the town to encourage Mr. McDowell to complete the road as soon as possible. So even if there's a problem with the process for the special town meeting, that come May, the road will be that much closer. And then all these questions about who's going to complete it, who's going to pay for it, those become moot, and the town can accept it in May.
so I appreciate that point a lot. Mr. McDowell did assert in a phone call this afternoon that he already has contracted for the landscaping, and I believe for the finishing of the road. So that's at least a step forward, but we have to put all those pieces of information together for sure. Has the road in its 2.5 years being used as a bypass been a liability for the town or the developer, to the best of your knowledge?
Through the chair, to the town, I'm not aware of any issues that occurred out there. Any issues that we have seen, we've brought to the developer's attention. For example, there are 2 manholes that continually weep groundwater that have not been repaired. Those will become icing problems this winter. For example, if the town accepts it and there's an accident because there was an unfinished utility, does that become a town liability? So
Sure.
there are those type things, and one of the beta letters from 2016, I think it was 5 or 6 pages long, that had outstanding construction issues. So there are things out there beyond just paving and raising structures and landscaping that we may or may not be aware of that are encountered through the process of construction.
So
Yes.
can I recommend that we take no action on this until we have those responses from our
Yes.
peer review and our town council?
Yes.
Well, what about a middle ground? What if we support the citizens petition going forward to special town meeting, but as a board, we don't have the information yet to make a decision? That's kind of in the middle, but it's...
Yep. I think we do need more information for sure. And we do have time between now and special town meeting to make our recommendation, a formal recommendation. We won't meet the select board's deadline.
For the 19th.
Waiting for the 19th for their, I'm just a little concerned, does that mean we don't satisfy the requirements for the citizens to take their petition forward?
I can't imagine that the planning board not taking action would affect the petition, but I'd have to talk to town council on that.
No, it goes to special town meeting no matter what. If the signatures have been certified, it goes to special town meeting, right? But it's a process question about the public hearing.
Should we take a minute to just reread
Let's
the
read,
bylaws?
yeah, let's
of the
reread the,
regulations?
let's do that. Let's make sure we know what we're doing. Thank you, Amy.
You can come up to the mic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. Do I have to state my name again?
No.
Okay. All right, so I think good discussion, but again, from our standpoint, as you all know, we've been talking about this for 3 years now. How can we expedite this? Because here's my biggest fear. We don't act on this now. We don't have something concrete happen in the special town meeting. We're going to miss the May window. I'm not looking to get this town accepted as a public road, this Legacy Farms Road accepted as a public road by the special town meeting. I'm a little pragmatic too, right? I know, I'm not, but May 2020, that's when we're really hoping for all the stars to align so that we can get something happen.
What was your essential question?
So my question is, what's the challenge with changing the bylaws? Is that why is that? Why would that be a problem? Because I see some raised eyebrows when I make that point.
So, hold on a second. So I think, just to answer your question, I mean, it isn't something that is necessarily great policy to change bylaw to meet a circumstance. However, this circumstance is kind of extraordinary, so I don't necessarily recommend a change, but I would recommend studying whether a change is appropriate.
Right, and obviously you all know this already, that this is like one of the largest developments in central Massachusetts, and all the circumstances that warrant considering the change to the bylaws. So that was my.
Can I, through the chair, can I
Yeah.
comment on?
Yeah,
Just
of
to
course.
be clear, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't have to be a change to the bylaw, because that's a long-term permanent thing. There's also an option of a waiver, just specifically for your project. So,
Absolutely, yes.
so you don't have to use the bylaw terminology.
If I may, through the chair, to me, the reason I'm raising my eyebrows with the bylaw change is that has to go through town meeting, so we don't have the authority to just change the bylaw ourselves. So it has to go through town meeting, and that's a long process to do so.
I was hoping, if I may, that's what we would use the special town meeting to accomplish, versus they use the special town meeting to have the road accepted as a public.
So information gathering, find out what is needed. We really, we are very, very united in wanting to understand what is the most pragmatic, practical, protective, in a 360-degree way, right? We want to protect those kids, those families. We want to protect the town's interests. And in my mind, protecting those kids and those families is protecting the town's interests. I read through those responses on the survey, and I was really surprised to hear that there is at least one case of a child getting hit by a car out there already. And I did not know that when I invested in this. And I don't know the details, I just know that I read it as part of the survey responses. It's not a question of liability. Obviously, that's a horrible liability for the town. It doesn't matter who owns the road at that point. It's a horrible liability. But it's much bigger than that. It's a question of protecting our kids. And we all take that really seriously.
Quick question through the chair. What is the process for developing or creating a waiver?
So I don't know the answer.
So I was just going to say the same thing. I think that what will make everybody happy is if we just ask Roy to apply for a waiver for our next meeting, if we approve, to allow him to finish the main road, and if we vote on that, then we approve the waiver, and everybody's happy, right?
That's a really good idea to explore.
Would a waiver go through the planning board?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would that be the process?
So
Still asking about a process question.
right, we need to know the process, but that's a great suggestion, I think.
It still would need a special town meeting or town meeting to...
There always has to be a
Then
town meeting
accept.
vote to accept a road, absolutely.
Right, but through the chair, we've done this all the time. Developers come back for an additional waiver. This
Yeah.
is no different,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Right, it's a waiver to the standard subdivision process. This road, it doesn't really fit the subdivision guidelines, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Amy,
So
you were doing
another
some
action.
research for us.
John probably was too.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It's in the, let's see, it's in the general bylaws about the presentation to the Board of Selectmen that no new street shall be acted upon at a special town meeting unless the petition has been signed by 100 people, so they have met that requirement prior to its presentation to the Board of Selectmen. So it seems like it's met that, but and I don't see anything in the zoning bylaws but in the rules and regulations of the planning board for subdivisions, there's quite a bit, and it's long.
So if I may jump in, there's requirements to accept a road in the subdivision regulations, which is, I think what Dave was saying, would need to be waived. In the general bylaws, there are procedures for accepting the roads and accepting private ways. And I think getting back to the original question is, does the planning board have to provide a recommendation? And there's no provision in the general bylaws that says this cannot go forward unless the planning board provides a recommendation. It doesn't say that.
Okay.
It basically is essentially maybe a courtesy or just standing policy that the select board refers it back to the planning board to get a recommendation. But it really is the select board that acts upon all of this.
Okay.
From what I can tell in this quick cursory reading
Yeah,
of the general
no, I know.
bylaws of the town meeting.
I was going to add, too, that it's usually written into the bylaws whether waivers are allowed for certain things or others. So I don't know that we can just grant a waiver unless it says in the bylaw that we're allowed to.
Well, I think, through the chair,
Yeah.
when the process you're talking about is after the road has been completed, that's when it gets approved by the...
Hold on one second. I just want to explain to the public. We can no longer exit through that exit. We can use the restroom facilities, but we can't leave through there or we will set off the alarm. Dave, I'm sorry to...
No, that's okay. I was just saying that I think there's two different states here, that the normal process is that the road gets completed, then it goes through town meeting to get applied, and we recommend on that
Right.
approval. This is different. We're trying to get the road completed, so the developer would ask us for a waiver if it's okay to do that before the development's been completed, the rest of the development.
Right. I think it's a good question to ask if it's possible.
Right.
So I think just to answer what Amy was saying, some bylaws, like the zoning bylaw, basically says this can be waived, this can't be waived, and otherwise it would be a variance. The planning board has the authority to waive any regulation within the subdivision, or any requirement within the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, section 7.1.
So there you go. We have the power.
It's a song, I know.
That's a really good question. I appreciate that. This board is so great as far as really critically pushing information around. I appreciate that a lot. Ms. Brath.
Good evening. Meena Bharat, 213 Ash Street. I first want to applaud the planning board for taking this difficult issue head-on and showing leadership. That's amazing. I think we are all grappling with the growth and related issues. And I think this is one of those, a byproduct of the growth and, of course, a very special situation. I'm wondering, just hearing all of this, having spoken to some of the residents, understanding what Mr. Gelsick said, looking to see what all you are looking to figure out, and the timeline with the special town meeting. I'm wondering if the planning board would be interested, or is it possible for the planning board to come up with a task force that is actually looking at this issue, maybe a couple of members from the board, some of the other members, like Mr. Catino, or some of the members from the community representing and coming together and figuring this out together, if that's a possibility. I just wanted that for your consideration.
Thank you. It's a really great idea. I appreciate that. Did anybody else from the public want to speak before we kind of wrap this up? No, John?
It's our last agenda item.
It is. I mean,
Well,
I'm not, you don't have to. I know you've been talking.
A lot of it's been said, yeah, and yes, it is very complicated, but it's also very unique. This is the first time we've had a Mass Works grant, or a road built up to the base coast of Mass Works money. The town got money from this Mass Works grant. We got a road built. We opened it up 2.5 years ago. Whether we use a waiver or whether we can tweak a bylaw to add, if state money was used to build the road, then it automatically goes in for consideration by the planning board and the board of selectmen. But if there's something we can possibly do to accelerate the process, to maybe get some kind of a change through at this special town meeting, so that we're set up to accept it at the May town meeting, so it doesn't go another year. I've been with these guys since last February, and trying to work out stuff, even just getting police details, everything to try. We tried to get the parking lot. Actually, that parking lot can hold up to a couple hundred cars if necessary. Near that.
And Frank's circus tent? I'm just asking.
But that, that was only going to be a temporary fix, and these guys really want the road done, and to the chair's point, it is unique, and we have been using it, and there's got to be something we do. The developer's saying, he'll do whatever it takes. He'll put the money down, he'll fix it, he'll do whatever we need. So we just all have to pull together and try and see if we can do anything at this special town meeting to make it easier for the next town meeting and to get it done. So I just, anything that you guys can do, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Appreciate
very
it.
much. Thanks for having me come up, so then I wouldn't go home saying I didn't say anything.
You're welcome. Well, I don't know that everybody is going to feel appreciative that I put them on the spot, but you're welcome.
I needed somebody with closing comments.
Yes, closing comments. Okay, so I think that we are with the residents and all the interested parties. We really want to find a solution that makes sense. In my mind, just speaking for myself, a solution that makes sense, that is permanent rather than a series of temporary solutions. It makes much better sense to me, and I think that this is tailor-made for some creative, constructive, critical thinking, and maybe a tiny bit out-of-the-box solution finding, problem solving. And I applaud you for your getting that petition put forward, and your positive, the ways that the neighbors in particular have been consistently putting forward information and politely asking for solutions and politely trying to work through the process, despite the fact that the process has not necessarily been tailored to accommodate what you need. I really respect and I really appreciate, and I, for one, and I know other members of the planning board are going to do our best to help find the right solution.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those, what?
Well, I'm saying, should we do any kind of vote to recommend if the town's interest can be protected, or, I don't know, because we don't have enough complete information at the moment.
I would at least like to be able to forward to the select board that we are united in our interest to solving this in a permanent, safe, protective, constructive way. And I will go to the hearing. Get town council involved, specifically asking town council to help us construct a way forward, a solution. Is important to me.
Okay.
There's an answer out there.
There is an answer, for Pete's sake. We're not talking about the moon, right? Come on, we can do this. And it is different, right? And it's been a little frustrating for me as well, because I don't feel like there has been a lot of townwide cooperation to problem solve, but maybe I'm wrong about that. And hopefully this special town meeting article drives the question forward from all sides.
I think you're right. I think we've been kind of burying our head in the sand because it's a difficult problem.
It's a difficult problem, and you know what?
It's easier just to kind of forget about it.
Yeah, but the only way through it is through it, so let's go.
So let's get positive here and proactive.
I agree. And just for fun, Jane is a former chief of police, so her perspective on this is really welcome. I appreciate that from a public safety standpoint.
So through the chair.
Yes.
There's a motion to adjourn and a second. I think that needs to be voted upon before any suggestion to the select board is discussed or moved on.
Listen to you.
Thanks, John.
Would
I didn't
you
want to be the...
go ahead and withdraw your motion real quick, and we'll do it again.
Or you could vote to not adjourn.
All right, we can
I'll
vote.
withdraw it. I'll withdraw it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay. So
So if the board, can I throw out a suggestion through the chair?
Yes.
If the board would allow the chair or somebody else to write a statement capturing the sentiments of the board at this meeting, I think that would be appropriate, since it's not essentially a vote to recommend or not recommend the layout, is more of a vote of an opinion of the board. And that way it doesn't have to be stated right now.
Yeah. Is that okay? You comfortable, Dave?
I'm sorry.
I know, you were distracted. I caught you.
I thought... Sorry, can you repeat it?
Somebody has to collect people's cell phones before they make...
My daughter's trying to fly in tonight. There's all kinds of delays and...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I get it. What John suggested was the board agreeing to have the chair or the principal planner, or in combination, write a statement capturing the sentiments of the board and take that forward.
Yeah, that's great.
And be forwarded to the select board.
To the select board.
What you said a few minutes ago, I think encapsulated it perfectly, so.
Okay, I'll watch the tape.
That's a good idea.
I hit the ball hard. Okay, nice, thank you. All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Yes.
I think you need a vote on that.
Oh.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. So would you, somebody make that motion?
I move Muriel's comment.
Suggestion to send statements
You
forward?
move,
Yes.
you move to
That thing.
have the chair prepare a statement capturing the sentiment of the board and pass it along to the select board.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Thank you.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? I appreciate that, guys. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Yes. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.